Joe should be here in a minute, so he hasn't given apologies, but we'll go through that in a second. So we'll just go through the minutes. Has everybody read the minutes? Yeah. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't present. I've read the minutes. I'm quite happy to just put it.
Okay. Just here. There we go. Any declarations of interest? No? Right. Great. So public questions,
We've had none notified, Chairman. There's no public in the gallery.
No. Okay, so swiftly on then to progress on outcomes and recommendations from previous meetings. So I was speaking to the corporate officer today about the meeting in July, and at the moment there is some space on the agenda, so I'd like to hear what you would actually like for that to be. Would you like to?
Well, certainly, Chairman, we can deal with that when we come to deal with the work plan item later in the meeting. And it may give members an opportunity to think during the meeting of what items they would like to see at the July meeting, because it follows hard on the heels of this one, and we're always looking for constructive ideas for where we can add value to the council's process. But certainly, if there's any issues in relation to the monitoring report on progress on the outcomes, please do let us know either now at the meeting or after the meeting.
What, from the?
All right,
Okay.
yeah.
Or mine. Can you get yours off? Yeah, have this one back. Ah, it's off. Okay. Okay.
Chris.
Sorry, is it working?
Yeah.
Yep. Right. On the 12th of April 22, it says that the outcome of the consultation with the future of Chillerton and Rockley Primary School. I understand this has been put back again. Is that correct?
That's not for this committee, Chairman. That's Corporate Scrutiny Committee.
Oh, sorry, I got the wrong one. I got the wrong thing. Sorry.
We will go through that on Tuesday.
No, sorry. Sorry, I picked out the wrong thing out of the briefcase. Let's go back into the briefcase. Oh, no, that was a.
I think it was there something from Councillor Medland? Did you want to raise something on progress?
Well, I presume we go through these points. I mean, it says in digital strategy, members to decide how to proceed with this. I mean, do we need to make some, you know, are we just going to... Hi, Joe.
Yes, Chairman, when we came to look at the digital strategy, it was left that members would read the document and then come back outside the meeting with any ideas of how they want to process the strategy further in the committee. As yet, I've not had any responses from members, but if members do want to make any comment, please do let me know.
Is it that you want an update, maybe, in the next?
I was just thinking, we actually have had quite a lot of updates from Claire Shand about this, haven't we, over the last few months? It's been quite detailed. I don't think we did. I've got nothing to say on it.
I think, Chairman, the digital strategy that you looked at was island-wide, whereas the digital strategy element that was looked at by corporate scrutiny just referred to the council's website. So they are two slightly different animals, so to speak. No, that's, I think, Councillor Stevens, isn't it? Yeah.
Because it's white fibre and stuff as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not due till the end of the year.
That's
Councillor.
right. That's in your
Yeah.
work programme, Chairman.
That's in the work
Yeah,
programme,
yeah.
so we've got that. And the electric vehicle charging points, I think we'll probably ask something about that later.
Or did you want to do that now?
Do you want to do that now? Yeah? Yeah. Do you?
I just wondered if we could have an update on the installation of electric charging points. A couple of my residents who want to buy electric cars want to know, where their closest points are going to be and things like that. So it'd be good to have an update.
Do you want me to take it from the?
Chair, am I on?
Yeah.
We've got Jane from our contracts management team and Island Roads here. If they are not able to assist, I'll give you a brief update.
Hi, Jane. Are you there?
I am indeed. Once I've deconnected, yes. Jane Dando here.
Did you hear the question?
No, I'm afraid I didn't.
Okay, so we'll do that again.
Hello, Jane. Jane, I just was interested to know how we're getting on with the installation of electric charging points. I've had a couple of residents who have contacted me. They want to buy electric cars, but want to know, where are the charging points going to be, et cetera, et cetera. So just an update would be great. Thanks.
Catching me on the hop. I'm afraid I don't have all the details in front of me. It is being managed by Regeneration as far as identifying where those points are going to be. The only involvement that I've had from a highways perspective is Island Roads have been installing them. As for the locations and the programme of works, I can obtain that and get it to you hopefully tomorrow.
Thank you. That's great.
Maybe we can have an update at July's meeting, Jane?
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. We'll absolutely get you an update. There are, as I'm sure Ian and there are 10 on-road chargers and get the number, but we're putting, I think about 18 or 20 in our car parks. There's an issue which I don't have to hand, and we'll come back to you as a committee on the on-road chargers are installed but not connected. I will get you an answer as to why there's a delay in connecting them, Ian.
Yeah.
And I'll also get you a list of where they're sited across the island, because we know that, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I did. Sorry, can I talk? I did have a discussion with an officer. I know it is. I just can't think of his name. He was going to put one in this particular point, which I thought was great, fine. And then this resident who just lives quite close to it said, "Oh, well, when's it going to happen then?" So I contacted him. He said, "We've had a technical problem." with these charging points. So actually, we're revamping the system. That's what he told me anyway.
Thanks, Ian. We're changing, as you probably remembered, working in partnership on it. And the old partnership is, we're moving to a new provider.
Oh, right, that's it, is it?
So the new charges are with the new provider. So as a local authority, we're not providing these charges directly from the authority. We are benefiting as financially. Yeah.
Facilitating.
We are facilitating, Ian, the installation via a commercial provider. But they're installed. We had a couple of hiccups, you're right, Ian. One in Ventnor, which was problematic. One in East Cowes, but as I understand it, that's resolved. But I can't give you an answer why they're not actually connected up yet.
Yeah.
So I will get you that answer.
Thank you.
Is that all for the questions on the work plan for now?
What else we got?
The bus service improvement plan, it says here will be included in the committee's work plan for 5th of May. I don't notice it here in the paper on the table. Is that, am I right? We haven't got that.
No, Chairman, sorry, I should have updated the progress report. That has now slipped until later in the year, because that fits in nicely with the action plan.
So it will be another date. You'll
Yes.
find another date for that one then. And that applies then to the housing strategy update that was supposed to be today as well.
That's right, Chairman. Yeah.
Is that okay, Councillor
Yeah,
Medland?
that's everything, I think, isn't it?
Councillor Leaf, have you got anything with the work plan? No.
Thank you, Chair. If you wish, I would comment, just for your information, that the bus service improvement is work in progress, obviously. However, there will be changes to some of the aspirations because we were unsuccessful, as Hampshire were, in attracting any grant funding whatsoever, zero for the Isle of Wight and Hampshire for the bus service improvement plan, which is on a sleight of hand. So we were insisted upon, if I can put it that way, by government to bring this forward with an enhanced partnership with our bus operators, with threats of 3.4 billion grant funding, which was halved at the last minute. I know Portsmouth secured a substantial sum of that, but the Isle of Wight didn't, and that will impact that bus service improvement plan going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Okay, so we have Anne-Marie from the Solent Net online to go through about the free ports. Okay. Hello,
Good
Anne-Marie.
evening. Good evening, everybody. Just checking that you actually can hear me. Excellent, that's a good start. And thank you for inviting me to your meeting this evening. I'm aware in the meeting papers that there are a number of slides in relation to the free port, so I wasn't planning to screen share. What I thought I would do is just briefly introduce myself, just pick out some of the key highlights on the slides that you have in your meeting pack, and then really leave time for you to ask any questions that you might have in relation to the Solent free port. So assuming colleagues are comfortable with that, shall I just briefly introduce myself and then refer out to the meeting documentation?
Yes, please.
Lovely. So as per the introduction, my name's Anne-Marie Mounterfield. I'm the Chief Executive at Solent Local Enterprise Partnership and the Senior Responsible Officer for the Solent Free Port. And in broad terms, the Solent Local Enterprise Partnership was asked by coalition partners in the region to lead the development of the expression of interest that was submitted to government for the Freeport, and now the work to bring together the full business case. So in very broad terms, the sort of Freeport programme in England was initiated by government in 2020. And they were keen to invite all areas in England to put forward a proposal to establish a free port. A number of expressions of interest went in. I think there were sort of close to sort of 30. And they shortlisted 8, including one that was for the Solent area, and announced that in March 2021. Since March 2021, all sort of 8 free ports, including ourselves, have been bringing together the sort of, if you like, the full business case proposal about what is the free port, why is it important for the Solent, what will it do? So I think if I start by setting the backdrop to that and referring to the sort of pages in the slide pack that you have, I thought it might be useful, first of all, to just talk a little bit about the Freeport programme and why it is seen as a sort of once in a generation opportunity for the Solent region itself to sort of level up and address some of the sort of economic disadvantage and disparity we see in a number of our coastal communities. So in broad terms, at a national level, the Freeport is designed to look at 3 strands of activity. The first is around trade and investment. And the intention with the Freeport policy is that the Freeports themselves become hubs for trade and investment. And as the UK establishes new trading relationships post-Brexit and through the free trade agreements that they are agreeing with a range of countries globally, that the Freeports themselves provide a sort of opportunity for export and import activity to be done on a globally competitive basis, still with the appropriate checks and balances, but also with an eye to ensuring that the UK remains an attractive place to trade. And we obviously in the Solent have a number of key gateways, including the Port of Southampton, which is a major hub for global export and imports and is one of the primary automotive hubs in the world. We also have the Port of Portsmouth, that is a port that is growing. And has the most destinations to EU markets out of any port. So Dover is clearly bigger, but it focuses on France, whereas Portsmouth have a range of destinations across Northern Europe. And within the context of our other gateways, we of course have Southampton Airport, which is and has acted as a regional and short-haul hub, both domestically and internationally. And many of the other free ports have similar trading gateways. So trade, international trade is one of the key planks of the free port policy. A second key area is to promote innovation. So the government want to see all the 8 free ports in England become hubs for innovation and for attracting innovative companies. And I know with the work we've done at the LEP, with the Isle of Wight Council and the Isle of Wight generally, you have many innovative businesses and many businesses, both in their own right and as part of supply chains, spearheading and leading new innovation in areas such as maritime, advanced composites, as 2 examples. And we're really keen that we build on that momentum and start to provide conditions that will encourage more companies to innovate. So that's the second strand of the policy. But the third strand is around regeneration and levelling up. And the government have asked all areas to come forward with a number of sites, tax sites, where development can take place, where the conditions for investment are particularly favourable. So if you look at slide 2 in the pack you have, the Solent proposition, what you see there is a map of the Solent area, which incorporates the whole of the Isle of Wight. And you'll see annotated on the map 3 tax sites There's a tax site along the Southampton Water. And within the context of that tax site, there are a number of land parcels that you'll see denoted in red. There is a tax site which is called the Navigator Quarter, which is a constellation of sites that surround the airport at Southampton and include airport land as well. And then there is the Dunsbury Park site, which is a sort of gateway site located in Havant, but just, excuse me, north of the city of Portsmouth. So these sites will bring with them incentives. The incentives include various tax reliefs for new inward investors, including capital gains tax relief, national insurance reliefs, and other reliefs such as stamp duty land tax relief, designed really to incentivise companies and increase and accelerate the pace at which they can invest and build out on land that has as yet been unable to come forward. The second incentive for companies is around rates relief. So companies locating to those sites will be eligible, depending on rating authority policy, for relief from rates for a period of time as they establish their activity. And the third incentive is an incentive that accrues to the local area, which is all the growth proceeds in terms of rates paid by new businesses on those sites will be retained in the Solent. So traditionally at the moment, rates are collected by the rating authorities such as yourself on the island, and some of it goes back to the centre for redistribution. But under this policy, those rates will be retained 100% in the local area for reinvestment across the whole of the Solent Freeport area, not just in the tax site. So you can see that includes areas such as the Isle of Wight and areas on the mainland that may not necessarily be a tax site location in their own right. So that is a major, major benefit that accrues to the area. And the up-to-date estimates we've done is we do believe over the 25-year period that you can retain the rates, obviously depending on what activity finally does locate on that site. So it could be worth up to £500 million a year in terms of £500 million over the 25-year period in terms of the sort of proceeds that could be reinvested, or around about £17 million a year. So a major, major positive there. I'm often asked, well, what determines where the tax sites are? And some of it is very much within the prospectus and guidance that government have provided. So they set down a criteria whereby each Freeport area could only provide 3 tax sites, so no more. And we had to discuss very actively with government the rationale for the Southampton Water, because there are a number of land interests there, but they are interconnected by the water and also by the fact they are all sort of waterside sites, and the gaps between them are largely either built on or are not able to come forward to development because they are also an area of outstanding natural beauty and of global environmental significance. So the reason we can't join those sites up is because we want to absolutely promote and protect and enhance our natural assets. And that is why you've got those sites sort of spread across the length of the Southampton Water. So maximum of 3 sites. There was a cap on total hectareage of 600 hectares and a minimum size for a site of 20 hectares. So those sort of determinants led to the sites coming forward as you see there. And also the site itself had to be developable. So they were focusing on land parcels where there was a minimum level of development or no development, so that, you know, we could unlock new land for development. You'll see on the table as well, in the original proposal, we looked at 4 custom sites, 1 in Portsmouth International Port, 1 at Marchwood Port, which is on the Southampton Water. It's the ex-MOD sea mounting facility. one with DP World in the Southampton port, and then some ABP land. In reality, we are now focusing on 2 sites for custom site approval, which is Portsmouth International Port and Marchwood. And we are likely to see, as part of the full business case, that list of 4 reduced to 2. So 2 custom sites and 4 tax sites coming forward. There are some slides in there about why the Solent is such a significant free port, both at a local and national level. So there is a slide in there talking about why the Solent is a national hub for global trade and investment, and it largely calls out a number of the points I made earlier in my introduction. So very happy to take questions on that when I conclude, but I don't plan to go through the slide. I think it speaks for itself. In terms of levelling up, though, I did think it was worth pausing to reflect on this. I think we're all familiar, and I know working with colleagues on the island, that there is a sort of working assumption that because we're all located in the southeast, we're wealthy and don't need support. And we've been very keen to make a strong case that our coastal communities here in the Solent are not typical southern communities, that we have a number of significant challenges and economic disadvantage. And you'll see in that map, the Isle of Wight has been recognised as a community at level 2 in the sort of government's own assessment, and clearly a higher priority than areas that are seen as level 3 areas, which are denoted in blue. And clearly at the moment, Gosport, because of some of the economic indices and hardships, is seen as a priority 1 area. And it's really interesting when you look at the map and you look at the colour gradings in the north of the area, and then you come down to the Solent. I mean, we're not dissimilar to some northern communities. So the fact that policies such as this are designed to support levelling up areas like the Isle of Wight, like some of our mainland coastal communities, so some of that economic potential can be unlocked, is an absolutely critical part of the free port policy. And this is probably slightly out of date now, but you will have in your pack a slide that shows that in the context of jobs and unemployment, and benchmarks, you know, areas such as the island and some of those mainland coastal communities against national averages. And you can see, interestingly, when you look at claimant count, you know, the island comes out as a sort of red area, where claimant counts are clearly higher than some of the UK and southeast averages. And again, you can see that, you know, it very much reflects the previous map I showed you, where we've got a number of residents in those areas in the Solent who are not enjoying the benefits of economic prosperity and are very much detached from jobs and the labour market. So why is the free port important for the area? Well, we do believe it provides a once in a lifetime opportunity to transform the Solent region. If we can unlock those sites and the private sector investment to develop those sites out, we do believe it could create significant jobs. Our first estimate was around 52,000 jobs, half in the Solent, half nationally, recognising that, for example, the Port of Southampton provides major support to the automotive industry located in the Midlands and the North. So critical to that industry, that port provides a seamless export and import hub. But also directly in the Solent, massive recognition that if we can unlock these sites, if we can create more favourable conditions for innovation, if we can use some of those local retained rates to upskill all our residents across the Solent, we get into the territory whereby we see growth, but we also critically see skills uplifts and local people being able to access the opportunities and new jobs that will come along. And I think I talked earlier about the additional retained rates that will accrue to the area. And when you look at the kind of competition for funding nationally, I'm sure you're all busy looking at your UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Levelling Up Fund round 2, to be able to retain some funding locally rather than it go back to the centre so that you can have a say in how it's redistributed is a massive positive. And finally, we recognise that, you know, we we are in this area global gateway. This proposal will enhance port capacity both for the automotive industry, which is a national piece, cruise capacity, and we want all those visitors to get off the ships and come to the island, to come to other parts of the Solent, spend their money here locally. And it will also deliver increased container capacity for the UK. So that's a bit of a brief canter. And in closing, I just wanted to leave a sort of brief reference, recognise the outstanding natural beauty on the island and your biosphere status. One of the big pieces here is that we can use some of the investment that will come to the area through the retained rates to actually promote net zero, green growth and climate change adaptation. And there's a slide there that talks about the Green Growth Institute that we have an ambition to develop, which will ultimately provide seed funding for innovation in green growth. It will, we hope, also allow local businesses across the Solent to test new ideas. And we know that testing and developing new ideas is an expensive process and is fraught with risk. So if they can have some help to do that, it would be good. We're really keen as well that it supports the green leaders of the future, so that some of your ambitions around your biosphere and around green transport can be realised, and that you can develop your leadership capability on the island and also across the Solent. We're very, very keen to see the area as a whole become a pathfinder, an area of global significance in sort of net zero and climate change adaptation. I think it's got an amazing start with some of the activity that's already going on, but with further investment that could be built on. So that's a brief canter through. I'll stop there, and I'm very happy to answer any questions, and where I can't, I'll take the question away and come back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting. So can I go to questions? So I'll go to Councillor Lever and then Councillor Medland.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anne-Marie. I'm glad you touched on this, partly in what you've just gone through, but I guess I'd be interested to know, are there any estimates on the direct benefit that the island will see, given that there's no tax and custom sites here and no significant port? For example, the slide we've got here says 26,000 jobs, but the website actually says 32,000 jobs and 16,000 in the Solent area. But do we have an estimate specifically for the Isle of Wight? And sorry, just bear with me. And again, an estimated 2 billion in extra investment. Again, how much is that directly going to be on the Isle of Wight? Do we have any estimates for that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And if I deal with the differential in the figures first, because I think it's an important piece. We have literally just submitted the full business case, and these slides were slides that I think were uploaded to the pack pre-submitting the full business case. So we've now been able to update on the website revised job assumptions, but they are direct jobs. That figure will rise when we do a more accurate calculation of induced jobs. In other words, those sort of multiplier supply chain jobs that are indirectly created as a result of the, private sector investment, new business coming. So you will see that figure rise, but the difference between the two is a reflection of the full business case that has just been submitted. In terms of trying to calculate specifics for specific areas, it's a very important question. And in reality, we are moving now from what government describe as the setup phase, where you have to put this business case together for the whole of the Solent, to a delivery phase. And I think, excuse me, the next stage of the work is very much articulating what that looks like at a local level for different communities, as well as what it looks like for the whole. So as part of the full business case, we were required to submit what we call sort of thematic strategies around skills, innovation. There's one on net zero and there's one on trade and investment. And that is starting to sort of, if you like, get underneath the strategic detail to look at, well, how does that translate in terms of jobs for the Isle of Wight? How does that translate in terms of jobs for Southampton, for example? And I think ultimately the determinant of that will be twofold. One is, a key determinant of that will be where the end users are. So, for example, for some of the sites along the Southampton water, there is a focus on advanced manufacturing and maritime. And some of the negotiations that are going on with new foreign direct investors ultimately will translate in us seeing new companies locate on those sites. And rather like companies like Vestas who have supply chain requirements, you will see a benefit accrue to the island in terms of new supply chain opportunities for SMEs. And the Growth Hub will be running various events, sort of business to business, meet the buyer, linking up our local SMEs with those primes or businesses as they locate. So it depends who the end users are. And it also depends very much on the nature of the industry. Now, we have prioritised advanced manufacturing where there is clearly a reliance on highly skilled labour. Some areas have prioritised in industries where job creation is a smaller part of what they do because they're not manufacturing. So I think to give you a precise figure at the moment would be misleading. I think, you know, of the 16,000 jobs, we would expect to see the Isle of Wight play a key role because as an island and as an economy, you have very significant assets in advanced manufacturing and highly skilled labour. And interestingly, your SME indicators around SME survival rates, SME innovation are some of the highest in the Solent. So we would expect that translate through to seeing additional jobs accrue to businesses on the island. But I don't want to give you a sort of finger in the air estimate because I just think that would be misleading.
Thank you very much. Councillor Midden.
Anne-Marie, thank you very much for your presentation. And I think your last answer dealt with my question largely, which was really about, you know, how the Isle of Wight fits in with this. We appear to be very peripheral to this project, but I think you've explained that very well now. The other part of my question was to say, how can we help you to make this more successful? What can we do to contribute to what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the question. I mean, I actually think, you know, obviously there is a working assumption. If you have a tax site, you're core to this, and clearly areas that have tax sites are core to this. But I do think the Isle of Wight is a very significant player in this. And I think there are a number of reasons. The first for me is I think you have leading edge world-class industries on the island that are best in class at what they do, particularly in areas such as maritime, advanced manufacturing, and sort of clean technology. So you know, absolutely front and centre, I think, in that regard. I think secondly, when we look at the ambition of the area around net zero and to be a sort of global leader, you're absolutely core to that. Some of the natural assets you have on the island are exceptionally unique and add to the proposition the area has. And we do want the area to be seen as first port of call for innovators in environment, innovators in sort of climate change adaptation, sort of net zero solutions, and to see this as a natural location for them. And I think the island has a huge part to play because one of the things that's really interesting for me when you look at global competition, you can see lots of different global competitors copying but doing things better. But the one thing you can't copy is your natural assets. And the fact that you have such excuse me, strong areas of natural beauty, that you have that biosphere designation, and that you also have some clean tech industries on the island, place you in a really strong position. And one of the early pieces of work we're going to do is a natural capital assessment so that we capture the totality of the natural capital assets in the Solent for us to actually realise that ambition. And I think the island are such an important player in that. And I think the third thing, what can you do to help us? I think, you know, we often see, and I talked about it today, about that increased port capacity and increased cruise industry and visitor economy. I think you've got a really important part to play there. I think there's something about, we've obviously seen the area as a whole, and I'm sure you've seen it on the island with staycation, domestic tourism sort of increase over the last 2 years with the pandemic. But I think as a destination internationally, we should be much more sort of bold about saying, you know, the Solent and the island and some of those visitor assets, the heritage, it is a global destination. I think we should be a bit more ambitious about pushing that, so that those cruise passengers that visit, they don't just see it as a turnaround port. They see it as, we want to stay here for 4 or 5 days. We want to go to the island. We want to visit the forest. We want to sort of immerse ourselves in those heritage assets. And you know, classic for you is Osborne House. I think it would be really good to work with you to see how we can develop, for example, a heritage trail, a sort of visitor economy offer that persuades people that, why don't you stay here 3 or 4 days? And I know some of the work you're doing to bring events like the Tour of Britain tells me that you've got that kind of ambition around your visitor economy as well. So we'd really love to work with you and get your assistance and advice on shaping that offer as we see this upscale in visitors as the Freeport realises its ambition.
Thank you ever so much, Anne-Marie. Are you okay, Councillor?
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
That's very helpful.
that's a very in-depth answer. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Anne-Marie. Good to see you. It's Ian
Hello
Ward.
there.
Anne-Marie, I've got general questions to ask you. Who is going to manage, or how is the Freeport zone going to be managed? Who will be the governing body? Who will make the decisions? That's first part of the question. And the second one is the tax retention, let's call it rebate. Who will decide who gets what? That's
Yeah,
it.
really good questions, Ian. And I think the Solent Freeport proposal is quite unique in that it is a coalition. So if I give you an example, Tees have a Freeport and it's largely a single site under the governance through the directly elected mayor. So you could explain that quite simply, really. For the Solent, there is a Freeport company, Solent Freeport Consortium Limited, that's been created. There is a board which includes the rating authorities within which the tax sites reside. It includes the relevant highways authorities that will be working to support the enabling of those tax sites, and representation from the private sector partners or landowners that are obviously involved in the delivery of those sites. The accountable body is Portsmouth City Council, and the board are there to do as most boards, set the strategy, identify key priorities and bring forward a plan. And at the moment, obviously, their time has been spent overseeing the development of the full business case. Now, as they move into delivery phase, they are establishing a number of committees to reflect the importance of a range of the delivery areas. So there will be a skills committee, which we would expect to include representatives from across the Solent area, a similar architecture for net zero, innovation, trade and investment. And that committee will provide advice and report into an operations committee, which is drawn from the board. So hopefully that range of committees will allow all Freeport partners and wider stakeholders to get involved in the decision making. In terms of the investment around the retained rates that you alluded to, there is a requirement set down by government as part of the Freeport proposal that the rating authorities involved sign up to, in principle, pooling their rates. So an investment committee will be established which will include representatives from the rating authorities and a rep from the Freeport board. They have indicated priority areas for investment, which include ensuring that the retained rates do support infrastructure enhancements, do support skills enhancements, innovation enhancements, and net zero activity. And they will sort of start to work on how they sort of set out the funding opportunities for the region in due course, so that, you know, colleagues across the region, including yourself, are really clear about, you know, how you put forward a case for securing some of that funding. And the investment committee then provide advice to the board on various investments or proposals for the deployment of retained rates. So that's the principle of how it will work, if that helps.
Okay, can I just come back just to one point? The Portsmouth board, if I can call it that, will we have representation on that?
Yeah, the main board, it's definitely not a Portsmouth board. It is the board of the company, and the membership has been prescribed by government. So government have said all Freeports, the board can be no bigger than 12 in size. And the board has to have the rating authorities on it because they're obviously collecting the rates that are going to be retained. It needs to have on it the landowner representation because of the sort of tax site incentives, and likewise the sort of port representation. Because ours is a coalition bid, once you put that on, the board is full. So we are keen to make sure that there are those wider networks and committees underneath to allow, you know, the wider Solent architecture and wider Solent organisations to be able to influence and shape the development of the Freeport and the delivery of the objectives. Because clearly, you know, in an ideal world, you would want a board bigger than 12, particularly when your Freeport has a number of sites. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to balance the prerequisite from government, who say this is the size of your board, with the reality of wanting to make sure there is a broader opportunity for organisations and individuals to get involved.
Thank you, that's lovely.
Councillor Lee, then I've got a few questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just to touch on the net zero and climate change adaptation section, I guess there's a lot of aspiration and ambition in that slide to meet targets, but the detail is, well, I can't see, to be blunt, and apologies for this, but there's a lot of business speak here. So like translate existing knowledge into actionable tools for SMEs. That doesn't really mean anything to me. So I'm just wondering, kind of, is there anything from day one that we would be doing towards those aspirations and ambitions that isn't just looking at innovation and ideas that aren't yet realised? And also, sorry, I've lost my train of thought now. No, I'll just leave it at that. I'll come back after that.
Yeah, no, that's important, and obviously you're trying to sort of capture a very high level in that slide things, and the danger of that is it becomes sort of meaningless because it's too high level, or as you say, business speak. So day one has already begun, and in terms of net zero, I can give you a flavour of some of the things that have already started, which have given us a sense of what we could then build out from. So The ports, for example, under the sort of clean maritime agenda, want to steal a march on being, the greenest ports, and to be sort of showcases for what sort of green shipping could look like. So Southampton Port have got shore power now. They are the first commercial port in the country to have that. So it does set a tone, it sets a bar. Portsmouth International Port want to hit net zero targets quicker than any other port in the country, as a result of kind of signing up to this net zero climate change adaptation. So you'll notice on the slide there are some targets to 2050. Well, Portsmouth International Port want to be there by 2030, and that includes ambitions around shore power, carbon offsetting, their next generation of vessels from Brittany Ferries are greener, and are coming to Portsmouth. We're seeing a number of the cruise vessels calling at Portsmouth saying, can we have plug-in power? Can we have shore power? We're seeing in Southampton that next generation of cruise vessel plugging in as well. So all of that is very much a starting point, a good starting point. We now want to see how that translates through to aviation, with Southampton as a short haul airport, and the next generation of sort of airplanes and jets, very much at the heart and centre of that is building on, we've just seen the first electric powered short haul aircraft fly and test from this country. We know there is research capability at the University of Southampton and Portsmouth around sort of green growth and using new principles to test things. So that's the starting point. In terms of how it translates practically, I think one of the things for business is when you're testing or prototyping new technologies in aviation or maritime, it's expensive because they have to have zero defect, especially sort of in aviation. So how this is going to translate is to provide a place that they can come where they can interface with the universities, where they can develop their ideas with seed funding to sort of de-risk the development of ideas, because we know not every idea can be commercialized. So you've got to de-risk that for some businesses. And then on the public sector side, we've seen, and actually the Isle of Wight have played an amazing role in this, the work that is moving forward now on nitrates to look at rewilding areas of land as a sort of carbon offset to support new development requirements, and we are a leader in that nationally, and we can build on that, I believe, to ensure that as new development comes along, it does sort of capture and showcase our commitment to the natural environment in a way that allows investment in the natural environment and offsetting locally, which I think is really important. And I think the final area is in decarbonisation. There's a lot of work going on at the moment about alternative energy sources, and hydrogen is a key focus point. A lot of that work is going on in the Solent through the research capability and some of the private sector. So we would expect to see some of the detail of that follow through as the Freeport gets up and running. So I hope that helps to give you a kind of flavour of the sorts of projects that are coming forward.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. So going on to Councillor Quirk, sorry.
Whilst this Freeport's a brilliant idea and development, the board appears to be made up of people with very, very profound vested interests. Do the memorandum and articles of association give power to these committees that are going to be feeding in, or are they just a stop?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think if I start at the board level and at government level, it is vitally important that interests are managed appropriately. And rather like any other kind of public body, and certainly from my LEP experience, there is a management of interests policy in place. There is a duty both under the code of conduct that they're required to sign, which is very much based around the Nolan principles, and under the Articles of Association, there is a duty to avoid conflict. So all board members and all committee members have to fill out a register of interest. It's a prescribed pro forma from government. They will be published. Once those FBCs are a full business case is signed off, there is a requirement to ensure, rather like I'm sure with your council and with the LEP, that registers of interest are available for viewing, that declarations are made, and where a board member has a specific interest, direct or indirect, or potential interest, they will need to withdraw from the discussion. And we've already seen that happen, and those interests have been managed appropriately. The board and the committees work to a terms of reference, and there's a very explicit section at every level where, whether you're a member of a committee or a member of a board, there is a duty to declare interests, and it's very, very explicit in the information. But we have asked, and I think this is why your question is so important. You're absolutely right. As the government sort of requirements around board composition have been set out, managing those interests will always be complex when the very people around that table could ultimately be beneficiaries of some of these incentives. So we've asked government to enhance the board composition by 4 to include the appointment of 4 independent directors. And I think that will provide the sort of balance to enable us to strengthen even further our management of interest framework.
Would you like a supplementary?
Would they be absolutely defined as not having any links or associations with any of the companies that are the other members of the board?
Yeah, I mean, basically, under the corporate code, best practice for listed companies. Now, this isn't a listed company, but it's always good to follow best practice. There is a definition of what an independent director is. So, our proposition is to ask government to support us including 4 non-executive independent directors, and the definition of an independent director is set down in that code, and it does include, as you would expect, things like not having a commercial contract with the Freeport itself, not having a direct sort of commercial interest in some of the activity around the tax sites, family linkages, etc., etc.
Yeah, the issue is that sometimes directors are on a number of boards, and you actually have associations across boards that are not apparent, and there shouldn't be any association of the directors that are in this with any of the other directors who are on the board, that they share board positions elsewhere.
Yeah, and there is on the register of interest, it's a Department of Levelling Up Homes and Communities register, a requirement to declare all your other activity. So the register itself is structured, section 1 is very much about the director themselves or family members. Section 2 is very much about any kind of commercial activity or contracts that their organisation that they work for represent is involved in. Section 3 is very much about the property side. And then as it moves forward, there's also a section on shareholding. And there is a section on other interests, which includes declaring other directorships, memberships of committees, of trusts, or other representative organisations. So it is a very comprehensive declaration.
Yeah, my point was it's not declaring it, it's actually then taking action if there are conflicts of interest that you can't appoint someone.
I think the Articles of Association and indeed the Code of Conduct, which is very similar to Local Authority Code of Conduct, does provide for that declaration. to be made ahead of the meeting and during the meeting, so that individuals do withdraw from particular discussions or decision making where they should do so. And I think certainly based on the work we do in the LEP and based on the requirements under the National Assurance Framework, it is incredibly robust.
Okay, Councillor Quirk, you're, yeah. I've just got a couple of questions. We're wrapping it up now. Have you got another one? Go on then, Karen.
Sorry. Thank you.
It's Councillor Lever, Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
Sorry, just on the board again. Quickly, did I understand correct that the Isle of Wight won't have or can't have a direct representative on the board? Yeah. How do we then? I'm just a little concerned, given the fact that nearly the entirety of the island is included in the Freeport. How do we guarantee a voice at the board level? That concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points to bring forward there. I mean, clearly we are constrained by the government prerequisite on board numbers, and we just have to be upfront and acknowledge that is a position. And I think it's also important to ensure that we don't end up with an architecture that where the only shaping of the Freeport is done through a single board with a set number of people. For it to be truly inclusive, it does need committees underneath it, and quite a large number of them. And the success of the delivery of the Freeport will very much depend on ensuring that you do have a voice through those committees to shape policy. And it's important for the organisation that it is more than 12 people shaping the delivery of a particular programme that includes the whole of the Solent area. I think, yes, it's very difficult to have provision for every single authority to have a seat on the board where the government guidance sits. So the committees are important. But the other thing that I think is important, the Solent LEP is on the board. And we are there to represent the interests of the whole of the Solent. So obviously the Isle of Wight has a seat on the Solent LEP board. We would want to ensure that fulfilling our role as the LEP, we do work with you to make sure that your views are heard and articulated directly at board level as well as through the committees. And, one of the things we're really keen to do, in terms of that dialogue is, in attending meetings like this one and hearing some of the concerns you have and the relationship we've got with the officers on the island and the administration is all part about making sure that in our dialogue with you as the LEP, we take on board any critical feedback as a critical friend, any challenges, so that we do ensure you have a route through to the board on a more direct level as well as through the committees.
Whoever chairs this is actually on that, is invited to the Solent Grey Forum, so I think you have a voice through there. I have a couple of questions. So we keep hearing the levelling up agenda, and so I wonder how I'd love to see new companies coming to this area, to the Isle of Wight, of course I would, but don't you think, or has there been conversations with the crossed Solent ferries about this project so that there's support there?
I think in terms of the broader levelling up agenda, obviously the focus of the Freeport work has aligned with the sort of government objectives around trade and investment, innovation, and regeneration and job creation as part of the levelling up. So it would be wrong for me to say, yes, it has been explicitly considered. What I would say is in the broader context of the Solent strategy, you know, and we are about to publish Solent 2050, the new strategy, which has been delayed because obviously publishing it in the middle of a pandemic when we were looking very short term would, in timing terms, not have been right. I think there is always, it's important that we provide a forum for the sort of discussion or topic you've raised there, so that, you know, it isn't all going to be done through the Freeport, that there are a range of forums to look at levelling up, and any areas that might need to be thought about in the context of levelling up and linkages from the island to the mainland. I think conversely, it's also going to be interesting to see, as a result of post-pandemic hybrid working, whether sort of comms and the linkage from the island to the mainland will be changed, enhanced, shaped by the importance of the digital platforms that we've all been utilising during, as I say, the period of the pandemic. So it hasn't explicitly been looked at in the context of the Freeport at the moment. But there are other arenas where transport, cross-island connectivity are looked at.
Okay, and just to wrap this up now, when will sign-off be if you're successful?
Yeah, it's a sort of critical question, isn't it? My understanding is that we will get some initial feedback on the full business case in June, and that government are looking to sign off business cases that were submitted in April, which includes ours, by end of August, early September. I suspect to feed into the autumn statement. So that's the timetable we're working to at the moment.
Thank you ever so much. I'm going to bring in the Cabinet Member for Regeneration, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair, and lovely to see you, Anne-Marie, and thank you for that really good presentation. I think it's got everyone thinking and quite excited that the bid is successful. It was just really to pick up on one thread in particular, the tourism one. As you know, we're a partner in the Southampton bid to be City of Culture 2025, and everyone's really getting, the whole region's getting behind that. But tourism is a really interesting thread that's been pulled out of that as an opportunity, as you articulate as well. So I just wanted to sort of assure everybody that, God forbid, the bid doesn't go through for the City of Culture. I'm sure it will. I'm very excited about it, and we'll know that at the end of the month. But they've already committed they want to continue with this. So having the mechanism, if you like, or the Freeport behind that is only going to add strength to that. So that gives me some sort of comfort that we can really get moving on this. So having that regional tourism offer. And there's one more thing for Councillor Lever, talking about business SMEs and the journey to net zero. We've got called Green Impact Isle of Wight is launched again, and we've got a meeting next week online, 11th of May, 1 o'clock till 2:30 for all the businesses that can sign up. It's free. There's free tools there, and you can also learn about the low case grants and loans that are available as well to help you on that journey. So we're starting now as well, not waiting for the big things. But it's a really interesting question, and thank you, Anne-Marie, for articulating that, how that would look with developing technologies. So that's it from me. Unless anyone's asked me anything in particular, but.
I'd just like to say thank you, Anne-Marie. It's been really informative. Thank you very much.
And thank you to you all for inviting me and for your advice and observations. It's always very helpful to me to take back to the board and wider colleagues. So I will leave you with the rest of your meeting. And if there's anything post the meeting, do forward it through, and we're very happy to respond as appropriate.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Brilliant. Moving onwards then. So we've got Regeneration Projects. Who's going to take that, Julie? Is there somebody online that's going to take that, or do you want to present?
Yes, I've got, I think Paul Thomas is online as well. I'm not intending to go through it. You've all got the document in front of you, haven't you? With the, so it heads off with the key achievements there, the Innovation White and Venture Keys. And then you've got the three other ones, the Branson Farm, Nicholson Road and Pearse Street. And there's yeah, hopefully that you've got what you wanted over the times. I know that Councillor Quirk was very interested to see that we had some milestones on there. So hopefully that the new format of this report is helpful to you. So really just happy to, so I'm not intending to go through the piece by piece. I didn't know if we should take questions, but Mr. Thomas, do you have anything you want to update on this document? It's pretty up to date. We've got Regen board next week, so I haven't got anything to add apart from what's in front of you. But Mr. Thomas may have. Hi, Paul.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, just I suppose following on from the Freeport discussion, I suppose two pieces of information. So levelling up round 2, if you like, is that we're currently working on that as well. So building on the success the Isle of Wight had with levelling up round 1, which was at Venture Key. So that links to the report, and obviously contracts are in progress. Works is commencing on the Columbine building. Design's been done on the barracks building, and there's consultation regarding the highways issues with the local residents, and Chris Ashman's leading on that. And that links to the levelling up bid round 2, where it's supposed to be a transport scheme. So priority has been given to transport schemes by government on levelling up round 2. So that kind of fits into the Freeport, kind of fits into where we're looking at. But we haven't decided how much money to bid for yet, and we haven't decided which specific site. So a couple of those of theirs are front runners, like Nicholson Road, where we've been waiting for a while to find the capital investment to take forward our planning application on Nicholson Road, and a couple of other sites as well. So there's that one. And there's also the Shared Prosperity Fund came out last week, earlier this week, in terms of clarifications, and the council's been awarded around £1 million revenue to take forward some capital schemes. Slightly disappointing in that, but it also has £600,000 linked to the jobs agenda to improve literacy skills on the island. So, and we have to do a full investment plan for that for June, and these reports will be coming to Cabinet once the decisions have been made on how we're going to try and take forward these funding opportunities. So it's a couple of additions to what's on the report. And I think, yeah, the report's pretty much up to date, as Councillor Jones-Evans has indicated. So I can't add much more to there, but happy to take any questions that we're able to answer on the projects presented.
Thank you. Well, does anybody have any questions? Councillor Med.
Hi, I just got some really technical ones, really. Under Nicholson Road, it says under key milestones, project has been on hold until the council's capital review is completed for 2022-23. I thought we did that already in February. I thought that was part of the budget process. So is that an error, or is that me not getting it right?
So the project is on hold. I think Mr. Thomas just explained that, but yeah, I don't know if that is a typo or not. But again, it's we're looking at. So it's a really, really important project, Nicholson Road, and obviously we've spent a lot of money get through planning it, and it's, you know, I think it was up for award, the actual planning application, and what's the content of what that would look like there. So, but there's the junction works that need doing. So until the junction, we can find the money for the junction improvement works, you can't really unlock the site and get going on that. So I think that's what we're looking at in the levelling up transportation. Hope that might form part of that. So I think that's right, Paul, isn't it? Unless you can add to that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes. So there's an added complication in that the regeneration team department, if you will, as part of the condition and obligation, not just on the council but on all the other developers in that area, the council took it upon itself in the end to do a junction survey, a traffic survey, and to a road design for the whole of the area, to satisfy the needs of the forthcoming development of potentially Pennyfeathers, Westridge, and Nicholson Road. And I think the answer to the question was there's a £330,000 contribution expected from the council for those works for that area of Ryde. So that's an additional find that we need to adjust apart from the access road. So I think that's probably part to do with the complication on the capital business case.
Thank you. Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Just a couple of points, a couple of questions. Branston and Shanklin Spa. Branston Farm, cost increase connected with increased materials and labour at risk of exceeding contingency. I mean, it's fairly clear that construction materials has increased by somewhere around 14% last year, and it's probably expected to increase by another 1% this year. How does that impact on the project itself? So you're looking at a project cost forecast increase of materials around about 200k. That's been calculated. But you're seeking to mitigate that throughout the remainder of the contract. So can you just give me an idea or a flavour how you propose to do that? And I mean, most importantly, will it delay the project or put the project at risk at all? So I'm quite happy to take that answer, and I can go on to the spa site.
Paul?
I think the project is, in terms of the development, is actually on target. It's about keeping the contractors on site. It's also a delay in materials as well. So I think that's a little bit of shorthand there. So there are other costs as well related to highways payments on section 37. I think payments at the end that's still being negotiated with Vectis Housing Association. The brewery, if you like, the council's investment through the LEP funding is actually almost complete and looking to fit out by Goddard, the actual end tenant, if you like, on that site. The business, the buildings, the other parts of the buildings that the council's interested in and building itself, if you like, are also on track. And Vectis Housing Association are having the same problems and running slightly behind on their housing development programme, but still relatively on track. I can't really predict in terms of what the actual end position is going to be on the cost overruns, because there are some complications with electricity substation as well and a ransom strip. So all those are being worked on furiously, if you like, just to, finalise and finish off the project. But overall, we're pretty confident it's going to be more or less on time, but it is going to be over the budget. But I can't really detail that out at the moment. We could possibly do a little bit more work on that with the project managers involved and come back to this committee, but I haven't got an answer to that tonight.
Okay, thank you. And question 2 regarding the spa. I mean, all going well, that's fairly likely to go to planning application in September of this year. I mean, my key question is really on that. Can you provide any details on the public consultation process with any proposed dates? And I mean, one would assume, again, that the consultation process would certainly include local businesses and tourism related businesses. So I'm just wondering if you could just clarify that for me, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the process is actually to get the recommendation agreed for the provider approved, and then the sort of communication plan and the consultation will stem from that. So not at this precise moment. I'm not dealing with this project directly myself, so it's like I may be slightly behind. It may be slightly more advanced than I think it is in terms of the consultation, but it will be all part of the programme once the heads of terms and everything is finalised with the actual purchaser of the site, because obviously what the site actually looks like, and it's a mixed use, and what it ends up like will obviously go through the consultation exercise and the planning exercise, which will obviously have implications for the viability as well. So I think it's just slightly early to have all that mapped out, but it will be in due course. I can give that assurance.
Paul, I'm just going to bring in Councillor Jones-Evans, see if she's got something to say on it.
Yeah, no, I know it's the wider consultation to the Bay Area is really, really important, and I understand that Shanklin Town Council are having a extraordinary meeting to discuss it, and hopefully you'll take up the Regen team's offer of any support you want there at the meeting. So please do invite anyone who's available that can come along. That'd be really, if you want to, that is. But I can bring up the how the consultation may take place at Regen Board next week on your behalf. Ask that question for you.
Is that okay? Yeah, is that helpful? Yeah, brilliant. Any other? Councillor Coet.
Camp Hill, in the corporate plan, has a high priority, yet there's no dates for things to be completed here. It's been downgraded in terms of the priority with highways. But if we're going to sort of stop having to build on greenfield sites, we need to start developing Camp Hill. And it seems silly that we're not pushing this one ahead full steam. Would someone like to comment?
Which one of you would like to comment on that?
Yeah, okay.
Well, there's a specific project within the Camp Hill estate, as in the housing estate area. That's what this refers to. It's the investment that we're doing into the
It's the part you
there.
Adopted, isn't it? That wasn't adopted.
Yes,
is
it's for the housing. So we don't actually own Camp Hill.
No.
So.
But you never will if you don't talk to the Department of Justice.
Pardon, sorry.
You never will if you're not talking to the Department of Justice.
Well, of course, they're going through a whole review of all their estates.
Just bring that back to the officer. I think Paul's got something to say about it, just for a second.
Yeah, because Paul's leading on the actual infrastructure project. But I think you need to decouple it really in one way, because they haven't finished their review yet. They haven't got back to us. So we haven't closed any doors, but we're just focusing on this delivery and other items within the Regen programme. As you see, there's a lot there that we've already committed funds to. So, but yeah, Mr. Thomas, because this is actually Paul's baby.
Yeah, Paul.
Okay, so in terms of regeneration, the Camp Hill is a highways project technically. So it's for the improvement of the roads and improvement of the lighting and the street furniture and infrastructure on Camp Hill, which was by their own admission neglected by the MOJ for the last 40 or 50 years. So the council had two interests. So the one was to placemake and improve the estate, and the second and more formally interest that's been discussed is to have that long-term relationship with the MOJ to release it for housing. That's the brownfield part of the Camp Hill estate, the prison estate, which actually has got quite a lot of contamination. The latest planning discussions have actually excluded the Parkhurst Forest Park, which would be the bit that developers and the MOJ would be interested in, particularly in terms of sales. But nevertheless, as Councillor Jones-Evans has highlighted, it didn't come with a timescale. It didn't come with an agreement that the housing sites would come with it. It was more of a building a partnership for the longer term and improving the estate. We've completed the street lighting programme on council-owned land. We deliberately avoided specific timescales because of the complexities of private ownership and council ownership on roads, highways and verges, because when the prison estate or the MOJ sold the properties to the residents, they sold the houses to the residents. They also redlined parts of the highway, parts of green verges. So we've been negotiating hard in terms of allowing, to allow council access onto land and to improve street lighting and other parts. We deliberately negotiated out timescales with the MOJ because of some of the issues regarding the suspected difficulties and condition of the roads and the standards as well. So the actual highways project is progressing pretty well in terms of street lighting, cleaning up the estate, street furniture now being maintained. And then once we have a drainage survey and all the other surveys completed and the schedule works from Island Roads, then we continue with the road improvements. In the meantime, I think Chris Ashman has been meeting regularly with the MOJ, but they've kept putting the prison review back. So the prison review is what is the key to this. So they will decide in due course whether to dispose of the land, keep it for something else, or actually rebuild a prison there. I hasten to add, these are all options that the MOJ is considering, but it's been 18 months in the making, and I think it's promised again for July, but we're not holding our breath given, the current situation. So I'm sorry if that's a bit too much detail, but that's kind of where we are with Camp Hill.
Thank you, Paul. That's very, very helpful. Anybody else? No?
If I could just say, I did actually visit the Innovation Right Centre yesterday up at Northwood, just to see how things are going there. It's very interesting to talk to contractors. That's a £1.4 million contract that's gone locally, and they've also got the contract for out at Venture Keys too. And they've actually increased their employment locally, which is a really, really great story as well. But we did talk about some of the issues you touched on regarding supply chain and prices going up, and it was quite interesting. In one section, they hadn't finished the area, but they'd already bought the kitchen equipment because it was available and they could get it. So they're really being really clever every day. They're looking at what's available, what can they buy, because there's even the issue where China's in lockdown. Some materials aren't actually leaving the port, so it's supply chain issues as well as prices. But a very impressive building. It's going to be a great co-working space. And got the back boxes going up as well, and they're doing as much, and they're working with the building as well, which is really great. So they're not ripping out absolutely everything, using what they can. And the design of the building is about a 40-year-old building, so they sort of design-wise are kind of like working with that, as I say, reflecting that. So it's quite sort of a funky retro place. Hopefully, when it's all finished. But no, really, really good project, and that should be opening sometime, I think, down for June, but might be July, what I was picking up yesterday. But we can't have Branston and Innovation Right opening the same month. That'd be too much good news to handle in 1 month, I think. So again, these are all ongoing regen projects that it all takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of people involved in this over the years. So it's not any one person or any one group that can take credit. It is really a joint venture, if you like.
Paul, I see your hands up. Would you like to come back in again before we finish?
Yeah, it's just on the contracting issue. So there's so nationally and across the region, there's quite a number of builders, if you like, and providers and suppliers going bust. And I think there has been a call from government and different regulatory industries for local authorities and others to watch the contracts. So in terms of some of the contracts that are where sort of contractors are being really tied down to initial price, say 2 or 3 years ago, they gave for a regeneration project. It's actually forcing a lot of those contractors under. It's a bit like the electricity companies as the prices have gone up. But there are sort of so good news and the bad news is that we've got cost plus contracts in place. Which can be bad news in terms of escalating costs, but also it does actually ensure that your providers are staying in business. So that's just a reflection on the state of the market. But I think so we have to be cautious with the limited amount of supplies on the Isle of Wight as well. That we don't tip one over by bearing down too hard on costs as well, or cost plus contracts.
Thank you ever so much, Paul, for taking the time tonight. Thank you, Councillor James Evans. 22, but of course we're in May now. So when was the date of the peer review?
It's coming up.
16th of May. Not long then. Okay, does anybody want to, have you read the report from Councillor Fuller? So shall we, what do you think of it? What would you like to see, etc.? Chris?
Two things. There isn't a Conservative member of the Planning Committee on this review brief, and I think there should be. And the second is, to me, one of the biggest things that isn't working in planning is actually planning committee. And I think the workings of planning committee should actually be part of the brief to be looked at.
Councillor Medland.
I don't think any party is mentioned. It just talks about the different kinds of people that are involved. It doesn't specifically
Yeah, but they've
say.
actually identified the people, and there isn't a member of the Conservative.
I don't see that here. You're in on this.
Are you talking about who's going to be spoken to when the LGA comes?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Are you talking about the peer review? Who is going to be spoken to when they come here?
Identified a Conservative beyond them, and it's the leader of the Conservative.
Understood. Chris, is it yourself that would like to be on that?
I would be happy to. There definitely needs to be someone who has that experience.
Okay.
So, we have people across the chamber who come to planning committee with preconceived ideas, and that's not how the committee should work. People should come to it with an open mind, and that's not happening all the time. And so I think that aspect needs to be looked at by the peer review, not just the officers.
Okay, we'll make a note of that and feed that back anyway. Anybody else got any feedback for it?
I do think that's covered. It says here, looking at code of practice for members.
I just was bringing Joe in. You can come in afterwards if that's okay.
Sorry, it's just to pick up on what Councillor Quirk was saying. Who, this is a gap in my knowledge, who has selected the people on the, is it the steering group we're talking about?
So as far as I'm aware,
who selected Councillor Robertson to go on there?
John Metcalfe requested the LGA to do a review of the planning department, and from that they then send people that got a planning experience and some other peers. So the LGA have peer groups that they can send out to councils for help. So, and then they request of the leader, do they, who they should speak to, or the department? Cool, could you explain that a bit better?
I believe that they normally have a set list of people that they wish to take evidence from as part of their visit.
I presume from Councillor Quirk that they will speak to the leader of the Conservatives. So therefore you need to ask your leader if you can represent, and I'm sure he would do that with me or whoever he thinks. Okay? But we will feed that back anyway.
And the issue is not the code of practice, it's the implementation and people who come to the meeting and say, I've done this and this and this and this, but I'm not biased. And it's happened for members from both sides of the chamber, and they quite clearly come with a bias. And it's how the code of practice works, and people are addressing that. And that, I think, should be looked at in the peer review, as well as what the officers do and things like that.
Okay, that's a valid point. We'll take that forward as well. So you finish that. Councillor Medland.
That's fine. I was just clarifying with Councillor Quirk one point. That's all.
Councillor Beston, have you got anything? No? So it's the makeup of who's going to be spoken to or with, forgive everything, and also the actual committee and how it's, yeah, those are two things we liked. Okay.
And Chairman, the last paragraph sets out that following the peer review, it's intended to implement an action plan. Would it be the wish of the committee to have the action plan as part of its work plan so you can see what the actions are and to monitor their applications? Yeah.
It would be great to have those and have them way before the meeting as well.
Yes.
So if I bring in Councillor Jordan's, the local transport plan, would you like to present that, or do you want somebody else to speak on it?
Yeah, thank you for that. You'll see. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. You'll see that I've provided some information on that. I'll very briefly, I will just give you some key points if you haven't read it, haven't had time. But our existing local transport plan expired in 2011. Was created in 2011. It's due for renewal. Next plan is to go forward for 15 years to 2038. That's quite important because 15 years hence, we need to be thinking about a different environment than we have right now. We've got Hampshire County Council and Atkins who are helping us as consultants in drawing up the local plan. Progress is to date, we're on target. We haven't drifted from that. And the key points, I guess, after that are, as on the information I've given you, is there'll be stakeholder workshops in the summer, this summer, 22. There'll be a draft of the LTP to Cabinet, just a draft, around the end of this summer, 22. There'll be public consultations after that in autumn of this year, in 2022. And the final draft, after all of that, of the LTP4 will be in the winter of this year or the very beginning of next year, 23. And the full council approval of the LTP4 will be sometime early in 2023. They're the key points, colleagues. Happy to take questions. And we have some support from the strategic manager online. Thank you.
Just lost a year in 1 minute. I just lost a year in 1 minute, as in we're down into 2023 for it. No? Well, Chris.
So the timescales look realistic. So it's, I think we should note it with thanks.
We've got a good team and working hard on this, and good support from Hampshire and so on. So we're optimistic we can deliver it on time. But hopefully, and more importantly, it covers what we need for 15 years, and that's a real tough ask to see 15 years hence. But we'll get there. Thanks, Chris.
That's putting a completely different hat on to think about those things, isn't it? Councillor Jordan, your favourite subject?
It is teasing me with 20-mile-an-hour zones, but anyway. My former colleague knows too well what that means.
I don't know how I can pronounce this. Glyphosate, isn't it? Okay, so number 9 on the agenda, we've got Councillor Jordan's favourite subject of weed killer. I can't say
Well, thank you again, Chair. We've got support tonight, thankfully, again from our strategic manager and from Island Roads. I'm not sure what you want to say. I've said so much, both publicly and amongst meetings that we've held in the council about this. I'm happy to take questions. Essentially, this is not a decision that we can make as a council in a binary way to use or not to use weed killer. It is ensconced in the PFI contract, has been so since 2013. in terms of method statements and product that could be used, products that can be used within the contract. It is part of the method statement, which in turn is part of the contractual obligations. And I guess as Island Roads tried to do was, and many other authorities around the country have tried to do, was find an alternative to this because of the sensitivity of it, and have been unsuccessful in the year that they tried that last year, mainly because they tried manual removal, and manual removal does not meet the standards required by the contractual obligations, and they therefore are exposed to penalties of certain natures and breaches of the contract if we were to impose them. And so this idea that we reintroduced weed killer, and I hope here, if I can just explain that we use the word glyphosate, but I'm using it in the same term as weed killer, and use the words alternatively for the same meaning, much like we might say a vacuum and a hoover. Glyphosate, it's weed killer. It is mentioned as a product in the contract, glyphosate, but in other parts of the contract it talks about weed killer. So as long as we're clear that weed killer and glyphosate is the same thing in terms of describing it, I'm very happy. So it was never stopped. It's always been in place, and years before, I suspect, by the Highways Authority. It's used. It was never stopped for a period. It always remained in the contract. It's always part of the contract. And when the unsuccessful manual removal of weeds tried and was unsuccessful, the only option was to return to, not reintroduce, return to the contractual obligation of using it. For your information, there are about 300 local authorities around the country of the 333 that use weed killer currently, many of which, and we put out a call around the local authority networks, many of which have tried all variations of weed removal in their authorities. There are many of them. I've got a list of the responses we had for hot jet foam, burning, manual, and all of them have returned to weed killer because they've been unable to successfully manage their areas. So that's where we are with it. Happy to take questions, and we have Island Roads here. Perhaps you'd ask Island Roads if they want to comment.
I would like, yeah, because we have got a few people to hear from Island Roads, and I think it's only polite to actually ask if you've got anything to say at all.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully I'm coming through okay. I'm sorry I can't be with you this evening. Councillor Jordan has opened that up very eloquently and really summarised the situation that we find ourselves in, and I would just echo the work that both the council and ourselves have done jointly as a team in trying to research other alternatives and also reaching out to the wider industry to see if others are able to tackle this problem. The problem exists as a combination of being able to do this type of work efficiently, giving the removal of weeds a long enough life, if you'll excuse the pun, of weeds not being there, in order to make sure that the network remains safe and usable. So we have also, as a highways authority, all councils have duties of care with regard to sight lines, visibility, the making sure that footways and the like are safe to walk on without any trips or slip hazards. So all these things are things that are taken into account when trying to ensure that the programme meets the requirements of all of those aspects of highway service delivery. So as Councillor Gordon said, it's been used for many years, 40 years. You know, the glyphosate, I would say glyphosate-based weed killers, because there are different proprietary product names that you would recognise from the stores and the supermarkets and the garden centres, as well as those used by contractors. And glyphosate is an active ingredient of most of those, of the very good ones that you find on your shelf of your in your shed in the garden. just with regard to the active ingredient, glyphosate is once diluted and prepared properly for treatment on the highway, there's actually about a 2% dilution of glyphosate active ingredient within what is actually sprayed. So that's just a little bit of context about how much of the active ingredient, which is the ingredient that's been under question for many years now. The questions really got raised by one case in the USA where there was a court case against a supplier of a product which included that active ingredient, but it's been researched over many years in Europe and elsewhere as to what the effects are of this product, and the resounding answer that comes back is that there are no ill effects from its use, and as I say, it's been used successfully for 40 years. That doesn't say that we don't wish to try to do new things for the future. We all need to plan for hopefully improved environmental and chemical-free futures, if that's the best outcome. And the trial that was carried out last year to look to try and find out alternatives. Manual removal is a thing. It is very intensive on time. It's much more time consuming to do it. Quite often when you try to manually remove weeds, you actually distribute seeds further and actually make the problem worse in the short and medium term, because you redistribute those seeds and they grow in new places. And Councillor Jordan quite rightly mentioned things like foam stream and other treatments that we've been trying, which, while foam stream works to an extent, it's more suited to areas of the urban environment where there's a collection of closely grouped weeds. But counterpart to that is excessively high usage of water, which is another commodity that is in difficult supply, and we wish to try and preserve that as well. So, as always, there's a balancing act of trying to find the right approach. So, for the moment, we've gone back to glyphosate. It's never gone away, as Councillor Jordan has said, and it's in use in the vast majority of local authorities around the country. It is controlled, and the application of it is controlled under the control of pesticides regulations that were set in 1986, and that has always been the case. And the operators who carry that out have to be certified under that, under the certificates of competence for those works that they carry out. So we monitor the contractors and the providers that do that. They keep extensive records. They're required under that act to keep extensive records of what, where, and when, and how much quantities, have been used, and those records are kept for statute of limitations on those is 10 years, or the recommended guidance on keeping records of weed killer use is 10 years. So all of those things are in place. We do understand that it's a topic which raises quite high emotion, and rightly so. We are always trying to look to do things differently and better for the future, and we will continue to look for those answers. Happy to take questions.
Thank you ever so much. Councillor Lever has a question for you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and I'm glad you touched on that towards the end, was because my initial question is, to date, what alternatives in terms of what you've recorded have been A, considered, and B, trialled, and what was the outcome of those trials? I'm assuming they failed, obviously, but have you recorded why they failed? Is there information that we can see as a committee?
Sorry, Councillor, yes. The ones I mentioned, foam stream is the one which has been more widely offered around the industry. And while it worked to an extent, it was more short-lived and, as I say, very water-consuming. And sorry, your last bit of the question was, is there a paper that we have for it? I believe there was when we completed the work at the end of last year. So I will take that as an action and try and find that for you. We obviously, the manual approach is simply that. It's our teams with hose and shovels and brushes removing weeds. That works over an extended period of time. But the outcome of it was that because it's a manual removal, it was agitating seeds within the weeds themselves, and they would redistribute. So you're not actually killing or treating those seeds and some of the roots, the deep set roots of the weeds themselves, because when a herbicide works, it is absorbed through the leaves and is taken down into the root structure and kills up the whole of the weed. So that's where the effectiveness of a good quality weed killer comes from. Elsewhere, we've also tried new attachments, or we haven't tried yet. We're just in the process of receiving elsewhere in the organisation some attachments for the small scale road sweepers that you'll recognise from around the network. There are side brushes which are designed to pull weeds rather than just scarify them, if you like. And so we're going to try those as well to see whether we can get a more effective draw of deep-rooted weeds out of footpaths and out of the channels of carriageways and where the carriageway meets the curb, and see whether that works. The one that we've tried just recently in London, which we don't expect we will be able to continue with because of health and safety reasons, and please, I don't mean that just from it's the health and safety police. There is some research that shows that if you electrocute a weed, that works, and so there are some organisations around who provide that service. It does use an alarmingly high voltage of current to do that, and therefore we had a very short trial in one of our London contracts, and we just didn't like the look of it from a health and safety point of view. And while we're still monitoring to see if it actually did do a good treatment to the weeds, we're not convinced that we would be able to use that in any sort of environment to treat in the future. The answer to your question, Councillor, I will check where the paper was for those works that we did last year. I believe we did do one.
That's really appreciated. Councillor Lever, is that okay?
Yeah, I was going to follow up with what if there are any that you're looking to trial going forward, but obviously you've answered that there, Rob. Thank you.
Councillor Ward, sorry, how could I forget you?
All right. Hello, Rob. Rob, I am amazed about what you've just told us, that, one person in 40 years. Why all the fuss then? That could have been anything, couldn't it? One person in 40 years. How come the company is not shouting this? The weed killers company is saying, look, this is all rubbish, what you're talking about. But I don't expect you to answer that question as a technical expert, because you're a user like we are. But I'm just gobsmacked by that statistic. Now, the other thing, when in the period when we didn't use the weed killer, presumably we did manual removal. Now, that must have been hugely labour intensive and thus far more expensive to do it that way. Is that the right conclusion I've come to?
It is much more labour intensive. It was done with the teams that we already have, so they got diverted from other work as part of a trial. It was done to see what the result was, Councillor. Would it be more costly in the long run? I think the more costly bit would be the fact that it wasn't as effective. Therefore, you would almost be doing it continually because of seed distribution and regrowth. I have to say, everybody who made trials during last year picked exactly the wrong year, because it was the most prolific growing season that would ever experience, growing conditions that would ever experience during last year. Very moist at the certain times of the year, and then good temperatures as well. So it absolutely went rampant. Overall, I would say, Councillor Ward, yes, it would be, if it was adopted as the only treatment, there would be people doing it constantly all year, and it would take longer, and I'd remain less effective, put it that way. Just go. I know you asked me to comment on your earlier observation, but it's in the news because the European license was up for renewal, or is up for renewal in December this year. And therefore there was the consultation and the evidence gathering that was coming along in readiness for that license renewal in Europe, and that's why it's become more topical. And out of that comes the statistics. and yes, you can rest assured that the manufacturers do put their opinions forward, while there's maybe one or two who have had issues with it. Certainly the manufacturers and the chemists behind that do make a good case for it not being a problem. And we have all those details. There's a very good information sheet on glyphosate, specifically on the Island Roads website, if you would like to look at that. And that does give you quite a lot of the actual chemistry detail on it, and that the history of that those studies that have been carried out.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Quirk and then Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Quirk.
To answer Ian's question, I have been involved in pesticides in the past. It's not people that it kills, it's that there's a metabolite of it that appears to be incriminated in killing bees. And part of the worldwide population decline in bees is attributed, possibly, to the metabolite of glyphosate, specifically glyphosate, not other pesticides, in the gut of the bee that becomes toxic. So that's the big argument about it. It is one of the best pesticides available, and the problem is not using it to clean streets. The problem is when you use it in agriculture, because it goes everywhere and it blows around.
Brilliant, thank you. And again, Rob, sorry, I'm just out of curiosity. Councillor Jordan picked up on the amount of councils that are still using glyphosate, which I appreciate. But there are a number of councils that have either entirely stopped or put in measures to significantly reduce the use. Are Island Roads, have they communicated with those councils? Are they in communication with those councils to gain insight?
Yes, the answer is yes. In fact, in London, just in the last few weeks, we were party to a workshop that was held across about 4 or 5 London boroughs. One of the councils there held the workshop. That was London Borough of Hounslow, and we were party to that. And some of those, Hounslow being one of them, is sticking with another year's worth of keeping going on using trying alternatives. What I would say there is that it is a more compact network to deal with. Everything is much more accessible, and the weed growth, that vegetation growth, is generally in, as you would expect, in an urban environment, in hard landscaping rather than in soft landscaping. So it is more accessible and easier to manage. It's a slightly less uphill task to try and work on that one. They will be trying the mechanical sweepers with the new attached brushes on there as well, to see whether that can work in the urban environment. So yeah, yes, we are, and most are trying to continue. The ones at Jardine, there's only about 5 who are trying to do it, are really trying to persist on manual removal, but they are in a different type of environment where travel time is less and there's more accessibility to the areas, put it that way. If I could, just before you move on Councillor Quirk's comment on bees, just it's a case in point. There have been studies on bee effects, but similarly there's other studies back in 2014 of studies that said there was no effect on bees. So this is a sort of, and I'm not condoning either opinion, but quite often for every argument against, there will be an argument for in this arena, which is a difficult one to navigate through. And again, that information page on the Island Roads website does actually address that point and give you some technical details behind both those and lizards and what was the other one we actually looked at in particular, general animals as well. So we tend to try and keep a look on the comment and the science behind those ecological issues as well. Okay.
Thank you ever so much. I'm going to pass back to Councillor Jordan in a second, but I know. Sorry, you've got another question, have you?
Yeah, so not necessarily a follow-up, but it's just more of a point to make as well, Rob. Sorry, is I know a number of other councillors have had reports back from I guess the way in which the spray is used again once the team is back on the quad bikes. I've had reports from residents that it's I'm not sure the right word to use, but it's not been very sensitive. So just a bit of feedback on that one. That yeah, the team on the quad bike's not been very sensitive in their spraying. I don't think is the general feeling I'm getting back from residents.
I can comment on that because we did look at that. We certainly had one or two from a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday evening. We had some reports. We haven't had a lot of reports, but maybe if you have more, councillor, please pass them through because we will track them back. Well, what we do have all the teams and those. I don't like calling them quad bikes, but that's exactly what they are. So I'll use that because it's quicker. Because they do conjure up an image of leisure pursuit rather than hard work. And I would defend the operators to an extent that they are at work and they are professionally trained. So quad bikes are used because they give the most access, easiest access, and they're more controllable at lower speeds in order to allow the correct spraying conditions to do that, i.e. not doing it at speed because you need to have the accuracy as the other councillor mentioned earlier about agriculture, where the wider hazard is because of drift and distribution in winds. One thing that's interesting in the risk assessments and the training that everybody has for carrying this out is they are sort of educated on wind speed, the Beaufort scale, and how to judge what drift can be expected in different conditions. That's part of their training. So that's just an aside. But in carrying out work by quad bikes, it does take the weight of the backpack off the operative. So you can obviously walk around and use a glyphosate weed killer spraying apparatus, but that is a heavy weight to carry depending on how much you carry. So the quad bike does give that opportunity of larger quantities carried and obviously gives stops the musculoskeletal problems that some operatives had carrying heavy weights over the years. So that's one plus on it. We do recognise and everybody accepts that quad bikes are noisy and can be quite alarming, especially if they're roaring through a village street in the early evening, for instance. So we have taken those comments on board because that was one of the comments most recently, and we've gone back to the teams and asked them to consider the time of day that they're working, the environment that they're working in more thoughtfully with regard to that. We have discussed over the years about whether quad bikes should be quieter. And there's again arguments for and against that, in that if you hear a quad bike quite noisy, you know it's coming, and that's part of the hopefully awareness of somebody working in the area. But we have asked the teams again to be very considerate as to how they go about that. So all those vehicles I've just mentioned have trackers on them, and that's not a big brother watching them. That's about being able to monitor has the treatment been carried out. As Councillor Jordan says, there are requirements for us to do these treatments. So has it been carried out and evidenced? So the trackers show where the speeds that the vehicles are going and where they are. So the recognised sort of speed for, sorry, somebody quoted to me earlier, there's a recognised speed for when spraying and there's a maximum speed for when travelling between spray sites. So again, those are monitored through having the tracker devices on the quad bikes themselves. There was also comments about waving the wands around Yeehaw as they move between sites. Now there is the Yeehaw piece, there's no truth in that, I'm assured of that. But the wands, because of a siphoning effect that you can get if you hold a wand down when you're moving around, if it's got weed killer in the tubing from the backpack to the wand, then holding it down will not help with suppressing drips and possible siphoning of material to get it into areas where you don't want it as you're traveling between sites. So they are generally held up in the air or held with the hand on the handlebar while they are moving between sites, which I guess could look, if you looked at it that way, of somebody holding it like a flag as they career around a neighbourhood, which I am assured that they don't wish to do and they don't believe they're doing, but we will continue to pass those comments back to the teams to continue to educate them in good, thoughtful contracting.
Thank you.
Okay, as like I started before I pass back to Councillor Jordan, I just want to thank Jane for coming along, because I know she hasn't actually said anything tonight. We haven't actually called on her. Oh, she did? Going to speak then.
I couldn't.
I still say thank you anyway.
Less is up. Thank you.
So, Councillor Jordan, you just wanted to
Thank you,
finish off.
Chair. So just finally, although Rob helpfully commented on one thing, so I'll just comment on the other. But there is this, and I receive them too, this idea that people, I hear it, I see it written in media, that they're waving their sprays about as they drive on their quad bike spraying. It's not true. That is not what's happening. And I'm glad that Rob explained that in between sites, that currently, and I'm glad to hear that they're looking at ways of changing how they operate, including the noise of the bike, if that's what's required, that people see the spraying and see the applicator in the air and put the two together and say they're spraying all around the place as they're driving, which is just not what's happening. It's targeted spraying. And if they're moving on the quad bike, at the moment, as has been explained, they hold it on the handbar or up in the air. I will send round, because Steve Ashman sent me an email concerning the delivery of the quad bikes, I thought was very, very helpful. I will send that round to you, Chair, for distribution to this committee, because I think it's really helpful and reinforces that. That's the first thing. The second thing, I'll send it, Paul. Very, very quickly, particularly for Councillor Lever, but for others, just remember when we can consider what other local authorities do, those without a PFI, which is the majority of them, are an entirely different situation. They're the Highways Authority, they can make their own decisions. In this case, with a contract, we have a contract that sits between us and the delivery, and that is part of it's not an issue or a problem, but it's there, and therefore, even if we as a local authority said, do not use this, we would have to renegotiate terms of that contract. So just when you say, what do other local authorities do? Just bear in mind, if they don't have a PFI, and most of them won't have, then they're in a different situation. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Many, many thanks. Is that okay? Finish that one off? Right, on to the work plan. So as Paul said, we haven't got much for the July, so
I think, Chairman, from today's discussion, we've added on an update on the electrical vehicle charging points, and also just a quick update on the digital strategy. Thinking about the Southampton City of Culture bid,
written that down.
Wonder if there may be any actions required following the announcement at the end of May, Chairman.
I mean, yes, you've written that down on my paper. That'd be great.
Quite possibly, yes. I mean, definitely, there'll be definitely something to share if it's a yes, and just let you know, we will find out. Maybe it's the week beginning the 24th of May, the last week in May, but it's going to be announced live on the One Show. There's going to be a big reveal, so no one knows until that envelope gets opened. So
I'll watch that sometime.
Yeah. So yes, there'll be, obviously they put their bid in and they've put their sort of work stream, what the year will look like. So there'll be, hopefully we'll have something to share then. But even as I said earlier, if you know, not going to happen, I'm sure, but if they don't get it, then we can start to talk about how can we strengthen these bonds that we've already started on anyway. But obviously there will be a budget, when they do win, there'll be a budgetary ask from the Isle of Wight Council for £10,000 each year leading up to the bid and including the year of the bid as well. So a lot of work ahead. So I think it'd be a really good thing to talk about. I'm always passionate to talk about that, so don't need an excuse. So happy to come along.
The other thing we've spoken about is culture and heritage, and I think that leads into that. So, God forbid it's not. We need to kind of look at that kind of strategy going forward.
Yeah, because we are working on working towards a separate cultural regeneration strategy as well. So we've got some work that's going on with the island collection at the moment. They've had some funding from Arts Council, so we're starting to build. They've got a new director there as well, so we're starting to build on that. So that would be nice. I'm sure we'll have some more stuff we can share then.
Kind of coming to.
So
When could
I
it
think
come
the
to this
director was
committee?
appointed in March, so they've just sort of just started really. So we should have something to share there, even if it's just a quick verbal update. It's a nice kind of like tie-in, as you say, Chair. So, and it'd be during the Ventnor Fringe probably as well. I expect it's usually that time of year, isn't it?
So much to do.
I know.
So little time. Chris.
In the budget setting, the final budget included £500,000 for improvements to the accesses to the beaches, the cliff paths, and some of the other paths that aren't covered by the grant that we got for the Round the Island path. I think we should have a report back on what's planned to be, how that money is planned to be spent at the next meeting. And there was also £500,000 put in for planting trees. It doesn't have to be finding fields and filling them with trees. It can be reinstalling hedgerows, and the tree could be a hawthorn or a blackthorn. Or, it doesn't have to be finding a field and putting 5,000 trees in it. We should actually have some sort of, by the next meeting, some intention of how that money is to be spent. And I think that's
Okay, yep. Anybody else? Councillor Weston, have you got anything to add? Okay. Put up that agenda. So then we come to members' question. We've only had one written question. We've had an answer to that one, haven't we? I've got some new bits of paper now. Is this one? Yeah. So, but that was for Councillor Steve Hastings. To the, is he still there? Yeah, he's still there. We're going to publish it or send it?
If he wants to ask it now, he can, but
Yeah.
Response. Yeah.
Councillor Hastings, are you there?
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Chairman. Yes, I am here.
You want to
Yes,
ask a question?
yeah, I had a couple of questions actually for Councillor Bacon, essentially, but I noticed he was there earlier, but I can't see him now. The questions are, can you please update us on the opening of the energy recovery facility, which it was stated following my last inquiry that the new target was April, which has now lapsed. And the other part of the question, or second question, is can you please update us on the number of subscribers for Green Garden Waste, and has there been any effect due to the 33% rise in prices announced in the budget?
Okay, so would you like me to read the answer? Okay. I was never good at reading classes. The energy recovery facility commissioning process identified issues with some elements of the plant, and the decision was made to replace these elements entirely to ensure that the ERF will be fit for purpose following hot commissioning and the final acceptance test. Hot commissioning has recommenced and the plant is burning non-recyclable waste. The 30-day continuous test required to pass and receive an acceptance test certificate is scheduled to commence in June with a July acceptance and a handover date. As with all major projects, the Council and its technical advisors are closely scrutinising the, is that word? Iterative test and ensuring that the island's new ERF is rigorously examined and tested prior to the handover, and will then be subject to performance tests following acceptance to ensure performance is maintained. All construction delay and additional work costs are service and the service provider's risk. the council is delivering this project within the procured capital budgets. Okay, and then the answer to your second question is, there are currently 10,296 live subscribers. 347 customers did not renew their subscriptions for a range of reasons, including moving to a new house, passing away, and price changes. The target figure for subscriptions was 10,000, so they've surpassed that. And the HWRC remains free for all households on the island to dispose of their own garden waste.
Thank you, Chairman.
Obviously, you'll get a copy of that.
Thank you.
So, we've got any other questions? But I don't think you've probably got anybody to really ask them off, particularly. It's been quite a good meeting today. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we'll see you in July. Make sure it's going to be hot by then, hopefully.